Let's start with the most mind-breaking question: is the universe infinite? And what would that even mean? Imagine for a second that you could hop on a spaceship and just keep going. No limits, no walls, nothing to stop you. Would you eventually hit an edge, or could you just keep going forever? And if you did hit an edge, what's beyond it? This is where things get really weird. We know the universe had a beginning. About 14 billion years ago, everything we know exploded into existence with the Big Bang. Since then, the universe has been expanding. But here's where the confusion starts. If something is expanding, it should have an edge, right? But when we look out into space, we don't see an edge. We see a kind of boundary, sure, but it's not really a wall or a limit. It's more like a barrier of time. Let me explain. Light travels really fast, but it's not instant. So when we look far away, we're actually looking back in time. The farthest light we can see is from galaxies that are 45 billion light years away. This is the observable universe, but it's not the whole universe. It's just the part we can see because the light has had time to reach us. But beyond that, it could go on forever, or not. We just don't know. Think about it: if the universe is finite, it should have some kind of edge, right? But what would be beyond that? How could there be something outside of everything? This is where the idea of infinity messes with our heads. We can't imagine something that just keeps going with no end. But what if the universe is like a loop?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Picture an ant crawling on the surface of an orange. The ant can't see the whole orange, but if it keeps walking, eventually it'll end up back where it started. The orange is finite, but it doesn't have an edge. The universe could be like that. Only instead of a two-dimensional surface, it's a three-dimensional space that curves in on itself. So if you traveled far enough in a straight line, you'd eventually end up back where you started. But here's the thing: we've never seen anything like this in the actual universe. If the universe is curved like that, it must be so big that we can't see the curve. It would look flat to us, just like how the Earth looks flat when you're standing on it, but we know it's round. Now, here's a question for you. What if the universe is infinite? What does that even mean? How do you wrap your head around the idea of forever? And what are the consequences of an infinite universe? Stick with me, because it's going to get even crazier. All right, let's talk about what infinity really means. If the universe is infinite, it goes on forever in every direction. There's no edge, no wall, no boundary. You could keep traveling in your spaceship for 1 billion years, 1 trillion years, and you'd never reach the end. But here's where things get really wild. In an infinite space, everything that can happen will happen. Not just once, but an infinite number of times. Let me explain. Everything in the universe is made of a finite number of particles. And there are only so many ways those particles can be arranged. Sure, the number is unimaginably huge, but it's still finite. Now, imagine you have infinite space to work with. Eventually, some of those particle combinations will start to repeat. This means that somewhere out there, far, far away, there's another you. An exact copy of you, living on an exact copy of Earth, doing the exact same thing you're doing right now. And not just one other you, but an infinite number of yous. And it gets even weirder. In an infinite universe, there's also a version of you that's slightly different. Maybe you took a different path in life. Maybe you made different choices. Maybe you're living in a world where humans never invented the internet, or where dinosaurs never went extinct. Every possible version of your life exists somewhere out there. But here's the catch: even though these other versions of you exist, you'll never meet them. The universe is so vast that the distance between these copies is so huge, it's practically infinite. You could travel for trillions of years and never find another Earth or another you. So in a way, it doesn't matter that these other versions exist. You'll never interact with them. But think about what this means for the idea of free will. If every possible version of your life exists somewhere in the universe, do you really have control over your choices? Or are all your decisions just one of an infinite number of possibilities playing out in different parts of the universe? And here's a question for you: if you knew there was another version of you out there living a different life, would it change the way you live yours? Would you make different choices, knowing that somewhere out there, another version of you is living the life you could have had? Okay, deep breath. Let's try to make sense of all this. We've talked about the possibility of an infinite universe and what that would mean for us. But now let's get real. Is there any evidence that the universe is actually infinite? The truth is, we don't know. The current model of the universe used by most scientists does suggest that the universe could be infinite, but we can't prove it. The universe we can observe is finite, and that's all we can really say for sure. Beyond that, it's all speculation. But here's an even bigger question: does it matter? Whether the universe is infinite or not, our experience of it is limited. We're stuck in the observable universe, and we're never going to see beyond that. The light from galaxies beyond the observable universe will never reach us because they're moving away from us faster than the speed of light. So for all practical purposes, the universe is finite for us. And it's more than big enough to keep us busy for a very long time. Think about it: there are 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe, each with hundreds of billions of stars. And that's just what we can see. We have no idea how much more is out there. Even if the universe is finite, it's still so vast that we'll never explore it all. So does it really matter if it's infinite or not? For us, the universe is effectively infinite. We'll never reach the edge, because for us there is no edge. But here's one last question for you. If the universe is so vast and full of possibilities, what does that mean for your life? If there are infinite versions of you out there, living different lives, does that make your choices less important? Or does it mean that this life, this version of you, is all the more precious because it's the only one you'll ever experience? Let's keep going. So we've reached this mind-bending point where we're trying to figure out if the universe really goes on forever. But let's bring this conversation back to something practical. What does the idea of an infinite universe mean for us here on Earth? For our day-to-day lives, for our understanding of reality? First, let's talk about our place in the universe. You, right now, are living on a tiny planet in a solar system that's part of one galaxy out of hundreds of billions in the observable universe. And if the universe is infinite, that means our place in the cosmos is even more insignificant than we already thought. But here's the thing: even if we're just a tiny speck in the vastness of space, that doesn't mean our lives don't matter. In fact, it might mean the opposite. Think about it. If the universe is infinite, it's full of possibilities. In an infinite universe, anything that can happen will happen. But your life, this version of your life, is unique. It's the only one you'll ever experience. So even though there might be infinite versions of you out there, this version of you is precious because it's the only one you can interact with. The choices you make here and now are the only ones that matter for you. So here's a practical takeaway: whether the universe is infinite or not, your life is yours. You're not just a random collection of atoms drifting through space. You're making choices, creating meaning, and living a life that's uniquely yours. And in a universe as vast and full of possibilities as this one, that's pretty incredible. Now, let's dive deeper into what it means for the universe to be expanding. We know that since the Big Bang, the universe has been getting bigger. But here's where things start to twist your brain. Space itself is expanding. This isn't just galaxies and stars moving away from each other. The actual fabric of space is stretching. So even though the universe might be infinite, it's still getting bigger. How does that make sense? Imagine blowing up a balloon. As the balloon gets bigger, the surface area expands. But if you were a tiny bug living on that balloon, you wouldn't really notice the expansion. To you, the surface would seem infinite, even though it's technically finite and getting larger. That's kind of what's happening with the universe on a cosmic scale. From our perspective, space looks infinite, but it's expanding all the time. The distances between galaxies are growing, and the universe is getting larger, even though it might already be infinite. This is where we hit one of the biggest paradoxes of infinity. If something is infinite, how can it keep getting bigger? It doesn't make sense to our brains, but that's the reality we live in. The universe might be infinite, and it's still expanding. And that expansion is happening faster and faster. Galaxies that are far enough away from us are moving away so quickly that their light will never reach us. They've crossed a kind of cosmic horizon beyond which we'll never be able to see or interact with them. This brings us to a sobering realization: even if the universe is infinite, we are stuck in a shrinking bubble of what we can observe. As the universe expands, more and more of it will slip beyond our reach. In a few trillion years, observers in our galaxy might not be able to see any other galaxies at all. The universe will seem like an empty, lonely place. But here's a question for you: does that make the universe any less amazing? Does it matter that we can't see all of it? Or is the fact that we have even a glimpse of it enough? Think about that for a minute. Now, we've talked about the universe being infinite, or maybe finite but without an edge. We've explored crazy ideas like the universe being a hypersphere or even a hyperdonut. But here's the thing: what if we're wrong about all of this? What if everything we think we know about the universe is just a tiny piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle? Let's consider the idea of multiple universes, or the multiverse. This is where things get really mind-blowing. What if our universe is just one of an infinite number of universes, each with its own laws of physics, its own version of reality? In some of these universes, the laws of physics might be completely different. Maybe gravity works backwards, or time flows in reverse. Maybe there are universes where life as we know it is impossible, and others where life has evolved in ways we can't even imagine. The multiverse theory takes the idea of infinity and cranks it up to a whole new level. If the universe is infinite, and if there are infinite versions of the universe, then anything you can imagine is not only possible, but it's happening somewhere right now. Somewhere out there, there's a universe where you're a billionaire. There's a universe where humans never existed. There's a universe where the laws of physics are so different that life, as we understand it, could never exist. And all of these universes might be just as real as ours. But here's the kicker: we have no way to prove any of this. The multiverse is pure speculation. We can't test it, we can't observe it, and we might never be able to. So why even think about it? Here's why: because it forces us to question everything we think we know. It reminds us that the universe, or the multiverse, or whatever reality we're living in is far more mysterious and complex than we can possibly imagine. And that's a good thing. It keeps us curious. It keeps us asking questions. And it keeps us humble. Because at the end of the day, the universe doesn't have to make sense to us. We're just tiny creatures on a tiny planet, trying to make sense of something so vast and so complex that it might never fully reveal its secrets to us. And that's okay. So here's the final question for you. If we can never truly understand the universe, does that mean we should stop trying? Does the fact that the universe is so vast, so infinite, so mysterious mean that we should just give up on trying to figure it out? Or is the search itself the point? Because even if we never find all the answers, the journey of asking the questions is what makes life interesting. It's what makes us human. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most important thing of all. So here we are, staring into the infinite. Whether the universe is truly infinite or just really, really big, one thing is clear: it's more than enough for us. We may never know the true size of the universe. We may never understand all its mysteries, but that's okay, because for us, the universe is already vast enough to fill 1,000 lifetimes with wonder, curiosity, and discovery. We don't need to know everything. We just need to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what we understand. Whether the universe is finite or infinite, what matters is how we live in it, how we make the most of the time and space we have. So, if the universe is infinite, or if it's not, the important question is, what are you going to do with your little piece of it? How will you make your mark on the infinite canvas of reality? Because in the end, the universe may be infinite, but your time in it is not. And that's what makes it so precious. And that's the paradox of an infinite universe. It's big enough to blow your mind, but small enough that your actions still matter. So go out there and make your life count. The universe is waiting.